software provider company, and our biggest product being Leapfrog Geo, which many people in the room may or may not know. So my presentation today is maximising open source data with the Seequent, what we call the Seequent solution, helping to find the next big discovery, which can be a lengthy and costly exercise. But at Seequent, we give geologists the tools to help with that next big discovery. So, why do we need help with that next big discovery, and why is open source data so, pivotal in that case? The reason being is the cost of doing business. So during 2022, exploration budgets for majors, juniors increased to 5.86 billion and 5.61 billion, respectively. That's an increase of 5% year on year for the majors and 37% year on year for the juniors. And mid-tiers were steady around that 1.1 billion. This, coupled with active projects, so gold and base metal projects decreasing, so 13 and 20% respectively, with the total number of drill holes down 22% in November. So just based on those two stats alone, what that's telling me is you're spending more money, but you're getting less production out of that. So there could be many reasons for it. And finally, we see, or not finally, but we see the ability of juniors, or we see that precious metal prices has flattened over the last 18 months. So the product that you're producing, you're not selling it for as much. So finally, we also see the ability of juniors and mid-tiers to raise money has vastly been decreased in the second half of 2022. I mean, that's probably due to the inflationary nature of our current environment. So, I mean, I'm painting a pretty grim picture here, so apologies, but I do have a solution. Well, I think I have a solution. So yeah, all combining into the decreased return of investment on projects. So how do we, as explorers, combat this? Maximising open source data to minimise the expenditure we put in the ground initially, using this data to better define targets and increase our understanding of a region, a project, and a prospect as geology or mineralisation. Working in tier 1 jurisdictions such as Australia, we have a lot of open source data available to us. You can see here on the right, we have an image from Geoscience Australia. So Geoscience Australia has acquired and emerged geophysical surveys to cover most of Australia, investing in mapping and extending our understanding across the continent. So these examples here, display all available airborne EM electromagnetic data. The second example in this bottom right corner here is a regional 3D model of the Musgrave province within the Yilgarn Craton, generated with freely available data. This model is available to download in Leapfrog Geo, so I'm hoping you guys all use it and love Leapfrog Geo. So allowing you seamless integration into a Seequent workflow or into your 3D modeling workflow. So, and finally, so the big carrot, or the jewel in the crown, as I like to think it is the WA's company mineral drill hole database, which currently contains more than 2 million drill holes and more than 7 million surface samples, which is released and updated once a quarter. With a conservative estimation average of, say, $5,000 per hole, this resource is roughly, working on those numbers, is a $10 billion drill hole database resource that's freely available to everyone in this room. So how do we maximize that $10 billion resource? So at Seequent, we have what we call the Seequent solution. That is a range of products that work seamlessly with each other within an environment, in an ecosystem of data management and analysis through the life cycle of a resource project, from discovery to restore. So you can see here, these are the products that we sell, support, and develop, from project generation to rehab and restoring of a project. The Seequent solution provides interoperability between all of our products and allowing for all stakeholders to have data and modelling input from geologists, geophysicists, geotechnical engineers, hydrogeologists. They all can use our input into models and data that's generated into what we call here the Seequent solution, allowing businesses to advance their understanding of knowledge of projects. Once models have been generated by the technical team, they can be pushed on to a further technical team, being production or resource geologists. So from the exploration side, we can then push that forward, or we can push up to higher levels, sort of the GM, C-suite, CEOs, MDs, for review of what we're generating. We also have the ability to push this to open web addresses, so you can even have some sort of model, 3D model that you can release to shareholders, stakeholders, communities that would be able to spin around and have a look, so they're more engaged with what you are doing. So obviously, as explorers, we're interested in this front end of that image before, the mineral exploration and resource characteristics of a project. So at Seequent, again, we have the range of products to take advantage of this exploration data, allowing you to model targets, prospects before drilling occurs, and hopefully reducing the number of holes and meters that you have to put in the ground to generate a discovery. So using the suite here, so the Geosoft geophysical suite with AGS, Leapfrog Geo, Imago, and MX Deposit and Central, leaves us with the likely possibility that the next big discovery hole has already been drilled. So if we can maximize that open source data on a project that you've acquired or picked up, hopefully that discovery hole is already there and you can sort of use what's available. So firstly, we have geophysical data, so we need to do interpretation on that. So any free range or any sort of open source geophysical data can be reprocessed and reinterpreted in our Oasis Montar product. 2D data can be transposed into 3D conceptual models with integration into Leapfrog Geo. So you can see the image here on the right. This is a seismic survey, and we've been able to use it to identify a boundary or some sort of contacting and generate a surface within a 3D modeling environment. These surfaces that we can create can give us indicated contacts that can potentially reduce number of meters, again, if you're only looking at certain depths or in certain zones. So back to that, the drill hole data, the $10 billion resource that we have available to us. So obviously it's probably not going to be into your company standards or in your company drill codes. So what we can do within Leapfrog Geo is we can put all of that data together into a section type display. So you can see the example on screen is an interval logged of ultramafic. So you can see when we had it lined up, well, there was the MGO from multi-element data that's spiking, and we can see that potentially that ultramafic here has been offset from its logging code. We can use our interpretation table to reinterpret that logging based on all of these data sets through here. So straight away, before we've even pulled out any core or looked at any chips, we can start to do some model interpretations. Drill hole reinterpretation, relogging, so to speak. The advantage of this is many companies have probably had ground over the years. You've probably got holes that are drilled by company A, by company B, using different codes. Maybe Geologist A was having a bad day that time and Geologist B was a whiz. But you have to put all that together for your own purposes. With this tool here in Leapfrog Geo, you're able to line up those holes and transpose that data into your company codes. So straight away, you're starting on a really solid base. We can then use the EIS, or the Exploration Incentive Scheme, core imagery. So any EIS hole that has been drilled that's sent to the core library, those images are taken by the core library and available for anyone to view on GeoView, which is the WA government data software or data portal. These images can be then loaded into Imago for modeling clarification. So if you then wanted to compare visually what data sets you have relative to a Lith 1 code or a Lith 2 code, you can look at that data through that portal. We also have the ability to use hex colors, or hex colors as displayed in the video. You can see are auto-generated by those imageries. So the average color of a drill hole interval, can highlight if it's a weathering, if it's top of fresh, if it's the base of complete oxidization, or a contrasting lithology change. And I know there's a lot of lithium explorers in the room, so your pegmatites are probably a lot lighter color than your host rock. So straight away you can start to pull out that data set just by using our system. And also every geologist is different. So if you look at the top of those holes there, is that browny red, red brown, light brown, maroon, dark brown? I don't know. We all call it something different at some point. This way we're taking that interpretation out of it. It's just a pure average of the colors within those core bins. The second is our machine learning algorithm. So we can start to pick up through here areas of broken ground or fractured ground. Starting to do our RQD logging for us. We're in our early stages of this. This is our early access program, but the future is we're looking for mineral identification and also lithology logging. You can work with us on that to better build machine learning algorithms. And then finally, we have these 3D models available to us, already been generated by the DMIRS. So we can start to put all that data together. So the beauty with Leapfrog Geo is its dynamic updating allows a model to be improved. So we can combine the geophysical data, the surface sample data, the drill hole data to these models to refine and better understand an area. So not requiring models to rebuild from scratch and improving the time interpretations can be tested and new ideas on a model implemented. So there's not that lag time anymore between drilling, assay, modeling, and reinterpretation. More speed, the ability to, get from zero to hero quicker. Right. And finally, once you've generated these models and you've drilled these targets and you've created some conceptual things, you're going to want to be able to collaborate that data. So once your drill hole data has been cleaned and validated, it can be stored in our cloud-hosted database solution, MX Deposit. It simplifies how you collect, manage, and share your drill hole and point sample data. In conjunction with your current exploration data, the newly cleaned valid data can be stored securely. It allows you to work anywhere online or offline. And being built in the cloud, it auto-scales to meet the demand of the user base. This means we can spin up new instances when it gets hit with heavy requests. So, if you've got 5 drill holes or 5 million drill holes, the cloud system is optimized to make that perform and run smoothly. We can also then publish models. I did have a little inbuilt viewer here that was connected to our central server, but I don't actually have a mouse up here. But what we can do is we can spin around a model that allows you to view, and these are the things that you can publish for stakeholders and shareholders, and just have more collaboration, having senior geologists, managers have a look at what you're doing and what you're modeling, and allow them to have input, which again increases the speed of from discovery to, or from no discovery to discovery, and obviously then implementation of a model and a resource. If you do want to have a look at that cool little model, please come visit us at our booth. We're at booth 3, just on the way into the main building there. And yeah, feel free, and we can click through all this together. Thank you for the presentation.
Miramar Resources Executive Chairman Allan Kelly is a geologist, geochemist, and manager with close to 30 years' experience in mineral exploration, development, and production throughout Australia and the Americas. He was the founding MD of Doré Minerals and discovered the high-grade Wilbur Lode gold deposit within the Andy Well project. In 2014, Allan was awarded the AMEC Prospector Award, and Miramar Resources listed in October 2020 and has outlined a potential camp-scale gold discovery at its Gidgee JV project and a large-scale high-grade gold footprint at its Glendore project. You should make these words a little more easy for me to pronounce, Allan. Please welcome Allan Kelly.
Thanks. So thanks, Jerry, and thanks to the conference organisers and the sponsors for giving us the opportunity to give an update on Miramar. As Jerry said, we listed back in October 2020. I think we're one of the first companies to list after COVID. So we're just coming up to our second year anniversary. We've been very active across our WA exploration portfolio. Most of the focus over the last sort of 18 months, 2 years has been down at our Eastern Goldfields projects, Gidgee, Glandor and Randalls. But we've also started doing a bit of work on some of the northern projects. So I'll actually start off by talking a bit about our Bangamore projects up in the north, and then most of the presentation on the Eastern Goldfields. One of the key things about exploration is you need to get out there on the ground and spend money. So since listing 2 years ago, we're very proud to say that we've spent about 75% of our cash flows being on active exploration programs. You can see that the last quarter, the September quarter, we had a very busy program going. We actually had 3 rigs going at one time. And as I said, you need to be out there on the ground drilling, and so that's what we've been doing. So I'll put this project up front this time. We pegged this ground in 2019 prior to the IPO, and back then there was basically no one up there. Within the space of about 6 months, we were completely surrounded by people, including First Quantum and Dreadnought, and a whole list of other companies. It's a really interesting area up in the Bangamore, part of the Capricorn origin between the Yilgarn and the Pilbara. We went up there looking for nickel copper PGEs because it was identified by the GSWA and Geoscience Australia as having a lot of potential for nickel copper PGEs associated with dolerite sills. But anyone following announcements of a number of companies over the last 6 months has seen that there's a lot of potential for other things, including rare earth carbonatites. So there's some key, I've just highlighted some key players up there. Obviously Hastings building their Yangibana project. Dreadnought have got a very big land position. And then a couple of other people like Lanthanine and TG1. So we're very well placed there. We have got potential for a number of different commodities there, including nickel, copper, PGs and rare earths. And we just put out an announcement last week from our Dooley Downs project, where we flew a detailed mag and radiometric survey and identified a number of large uranium thorium anomalies that look like they're associated with magnetic lows. So, we think there's potential there for intrusions, potentially carbonatites within the sediments. And if that's true, that could be pretty exciting for the company. So we're planning to get up there and do some more detailed follow-up work on the ground as well. If we skip down to the Eastern Goldfields, where our main focus has been, we've got 3 projects, in close proximity to Kalgoorlie. Great locations there. Obviously, Gidgee right on the highway north of Kalgoorlie, Glandor about 40 kilometres out, and then Randalls a bit further out again. And the key thing about all these projects is that they're underexplored, but they're very close to existing mining and processing operations. So if we find something there, we've got a number of options at how we monetize the projects. So this is Glandor. As I said, it's about 40 kilometres east of Kalgoorlie. It's mostly covered by Salt Lake, Lake Yindalguda, and it sits about 5 or 6 kilometres north of where Black Cat are planning to build a processing plant there at the Majestic target. What we like about this is you can see that little red blob within the project. That's a little lake granitoid, and it looks very similar to what you see at Majestic and Imperial and also the Trojans deposit. So we think there's good potential to find something pretty significant here. And again, as I said before, we're very close to a number of opportunities to process if we find something there. Just zooming in a bit, the geology is dominated by this little granitoid intrusion that intrudes into a mafic sill complex. Previous explorers had outlined a pretty large gold footprint on the lake with air core drilling. And a couple of people, Harmony and Anglo Gold Ashanti, had drilled some diamond holes at the Glandor East target and got some pretty interesting results, including 6 metres at 30 grams, sitting on what we thought was a little pressure shadow on that eastern side of the granite there. Over the last sort of 18 months, we firstly did an air core program on the lake and then got some pretty nice air core results up to a couple of metres at 7 grams. But then as soon as we got a diamond rig that was capable of going on the lake, we headed out to Glandor East. So this is a zoom in of that Glandor East target. It's quite a large target. It's about 700 meters at least from end to end. And you can see the magnetic image there on the left-hand side is the granite in the low mag zone, and then a magnetite bearing mafic unit, which the granite intrudes into. And then there's a whole series of these northeast trending faults, which is pretty similar to what you see at Majestic. So we've gone out there, done a 7-hole program, testing the intersection of those northeast structures with that granite mafic contact. The first couple of holes we drilled got visible gold, visible high-grade gold, and we're waiting on assay results for the rest of that program at the moment. It's still, open along strike and at depth, and we think there's potential here to find something pretty significant. Just a snapshot of the rig on the lake there. It's a lake, but it's actually not a bad salt lake to be working on. The prospect's pretty close to shore, and it's not too bad to get around. So that's a little lake diamond rig drilling pretty much underneath that high grade 6 meters at 30 gram intersection. And you can see a couple of snapshots there, one of some coarse gold from a vein in the granodiorite itself, and then a picture of the mafic unit that we drilled through. And you can't probably see it very well, but it's got sulfides all through it. So we're waiting on the assay results from that. Gidgee is probably our flagship project. And to use a real estate analogy, we think it's the cheapest house on the best street. It sits, immediately north of Kalgoorlie, in between the Super Pit and Paddington, on the highway. So fantastic access, and it's actually pretty hard to believe that this project was underexplored till we got hold of it. And one of the reasons was it was sort of, I guess, hidden away in a big company, in KCGM, but also there's quite a bit of transported cover that sits over the prospective geology. And so a lot of the drilling that was done before didn't even get through that transported cover. So quite quickly, when we went out to Marylebone, which is that sort of central area, we started getting really good air core hits. So all those pinks, reds and pinks, they're all +1 gram hits in air core. So over sort of 12, 18 months, we've identified at least 4, 1 kilometre long air core anomalies or air core targets. Marylebone's actually 2, that sort of 2 parallel zones there, with results up to 13 grams per tonne. Blackfriars is looking very interesting because that sits on the contact between the black flag beds and the mafic unit. And that's about, at least 1 kilometre long, with hits up to 11 grams at the end of the hole. And then you've got Highway, which is one of the sort of more recent discoveries, and then Railway. To date, this has really all been just air core drilling. So now we're trying to work out the best way to drill this deeper, given that we've got so many targets there and such a big footprint. Down at the south there, right on our tenement boundary, you'll see a deposit called Runway, which is owned by Northern Star. And we'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. So this is Runway, as I said, right on our southern tenement boundary. So that image is looking to the north onto our ground. And Northern Star have a 300,000 ounce deposit there with some pretty nice hits. But just recently, they've done some more drilling there, and they think there's actually something deeper and potentially bigger underneath Runway. And the interesting thing is that all the previous drilling was done towards the east, which implies a westerly dip. But the drilling they're doing at the moment is towards the west, which implies the opposite dip. We did an IP line right on our tenement boundary, and you can see a very strong chargeability anomaly there that we think could be the expression of what they're drilling. So we're waiting to see what results they come up with before we start going out there again with the diamond rig. This is our whale shark project. Sits up near Onslow. It's about 40 kilometres east of Onslow, about 10 kilometres from the coast. We can actually see the coast from our camp when we get the drone up. It's a Proterozoic biff, so it's part of the Gascoyne complex, but it sits under the Carnarvon Basin where it sort of onlaps the Proterozoic. It's not very deep. It's only about 100 metres of cover there. So compared to ISCG targets in places like the Patterson or South Australia, this is quite shallow. And the great thing is that this Onslow area is really picking up in terms of infrastructure and activity. We've got, major gas pipeline there, highway, a port, the gas plants, and Mineral Resources are just building a new mine at a place called Red Hill, and their haul road runs right across the bottom of our project. So, a great place again to find something if you want to ultimately develop it. So just zooming in at Whale Shark, what we're looking for is an IOCG, iron oxide copper gold. The analogy is Ernest Henry. So fortunately for us, there's a very good data set over Ernest Henry, including geochem and geophysics and drilling. So what we did is we went out with an air core. Firstly, we did 2 rounds of MMI soil sampling, and that gave us these very large copper, uranium, gold, moly, rare earth anomalies that look similar to what you see over an IHCG system. And then we got an air core rig, given the shallow depth of cover, and we just drilled down to the top of the basement and sampled sort of just above and below the unconformity between the Carnarvon Basin and the Proterozoic, and got these very large copper and ICG pathfinder anomalies at that unconformity. So now what we want to do is we want to get probably an EM crew out there and do EM over all the MMI anomalies, and then get a deeper rig, a diamond rig probably, and go and test them at deeper depths. Finally, our Langwell project's in the Murchison, sits in between the Deflector and the Golden Grove operations. It's a sort of a high metamorphic grade greenstone belt. There's quite a lot of pegmatite outcrop through here. And then looking at radiometric anomalies, looks like there could be even more pegmatite that's sort of undercover. It's probably not lithium pegmatite. It's probably more likely to be rare earth pegmatites, given its location. But one of the things that back in 2009, 2010, a previous company did some auger drilling and got some large gold and rare earth anomalism through samarium. We got some elevated lanthanum and cerium results in soils, but the very limited air core drilling that was done back in 2010 got a nice hit of about 4 meters at 1500 ppm total rare earths, and a high proportion of that was neodymium. Now it's probably likely to be clay hosted, not hard rock, but it's literally 1 4 meter sample in one drill hole. So there's obviously a bit of work to do there as well. So in summary, this is a good slide to sort of sum up our projects and our targets and where they are at their different stages. So obviously the most advanced ones are Glandor East and Marylebone, where we're doing bedrock drilling. But you can see that we've got a wide sort of variety of different targets there for different commodities at different stages of the exploration process. So that gives our shareholders a lot of substantial upside if any of those things come off. Quick corporate snapshot slide. All I want to say here is, if you look at our market cap and our EV, I think they're pretty modest given the projects that we've got. So again, I think there's a lot of upside in that. And then just finally, to summarise it all, we've got potential for a new gold camp at Gidgee, a great land position there, and we've got immediate success from air core drilling. There's potential for high grade gold deposit at Glandor as well, and I think Whale Shark and Bangor give us upside for the sort of real large company maker discoveries as well. We're out on the ground, produce regular news flow. We've got a very tight share register and a low EV, which I think creates a lot of substantial upside for our shareholders. And I think that would probably do. Great.
Zeff Reeves is Managing Director of Tesoro Gold, who are rapidly advancing the 1.1 million ounce and growing Ternera gold deposit at the regional scale El Zorro gold project in Chile. He joins us now with the Tesoro story. Welcome along. Round of applause for Zeff Reeves.
Thank you. Thanks to the RIU guys again for allowing us to present what we think is a fairly compelling gold story. The El Zorro gold project in Chile. So Tesoro is a single asset company with a gold asset in the Atacama region of Chile. It's right on the coast, and it's got fantastic supporting infrastructure. The asset itself, it's over 570 square kilometres of a new Chilean intrusive related gold system. These systems have never been found before in Chile. We're the first that we know of anyway that has found one of these. So we got a big first mover advantage in exploring this area and looking for more of the same. And in the middle of it, we've got a 1.1 million ounce and growing gold deposit at Ternera. So the future for us really is continuing to grow that resource at Tenera. Other discoveries on the property with some of the other targets that we're finding. We really think that the 1.1 million ounce Tenera deposit is just the start. That's certainly got a lot of growth in that deposit itself. So this is just the highlights of some of our drill intercepts. So I think some of our peers would be quite envious of getting drill results like these, but these are fairly typical of what we see in the main parts of the Tenera gold deposit. We recently announced that top hole there, 434.6 metres at 1.22 grams per tonne gold. You'll see that they've got, all those holes have got higher grade portions within them. So typically we see a broad intercept, typically around 1.5 up to 2.5 grams, with higher grade intercepts where we cross our fault zones that control mineralisation within the deposit. So those high grade zones hang together really well and provide a pretty good opportunity for good cash flow in any future mining operation. So a brief history on Tesoro. It was founded in 2017 as a private company that we did the deal on our Zorro originally on a 1,500 hectare concession holding sitting over the Tenera deposit. We ran the company privately for 3 years and listed it in 2020. During that 3 years, we drilled the first 16 diamond holes that we funded ourselves into Tenera and confirmed the discovery of a new Chilean intrusive related gold system. So we listed in 2020. Since February 2020, we've now drilled over 100,000 metres of diamond drilling into Tenera. We've tested a couple of the other targets and defined that 1.1 million ounce gold deposit at Tenera. And we've recently, as in this week, just announced a strategic investment from Gold Fields, the South African listed gold miner. So it's been a pretty rapid progression from listing through to where we are today, and we really do think we've got a future gold mine on our hands. So growth for Tesoro is really focused on two main areas. One is that district discovery. So that 1,500 hectares that we did the deal on back in 2017 is now a 570 square kilometre concession holding over what we think is some of the most prospective ground in Chile. So part of that Goldfields investment is a commitment to around $3.8 million of expenditure on regional exploration over the next 18 months to test a lot of those regional targets that we've delineated. And typically in these systems, you start to see clusters of deposits. So it'll be quite unusual if Tenera is the only gold deposit in this system. And then on the other side, we've got Tenera itself. We really think that's got exceptional growth left in it. That deposit is open in all directions. And we've recently announced some drilling from a couple of big step-out holes, which are going to add another couple of 100 metres of strike onto that deposit. But certainly that's got a long way to go itself. So there'll be some focus on continued resource growth. And in the background, we're doing a lot of work getting this deposit ready for mining. So we're doing mining studies and doing a lot of the baseline work for environmental permitting and the like. So this map shows where we are. So I think if you wanted to build a gold mine, there's probably no better place in the world. Chile is a very stable and long-lived mining industry and very easy to do business. So this, for a mining company, and this project's located in Region 3 in the Atacama Desert. So this is the driest place on Earth, 7 millimetres of rain a year. So we have no agricultural lands that we impact on, and all of our concessions are covering government-owned land. So we can get about our business fairly easily. You can see there's a number of very large mining companies and mines already operating in the region. Traditionally, it's a copper mining region, IOCG style and copper porphyries. But we're a lot closer to the coast. You can see our concessions in the red there with Tenera, that yellow, orange diamond. So we're only 13 k's from the coast. We can get access to the ocean for processing in the process plant. All our met work's been done with seawater. We've had up to 94% gold recovery from the ore at Tenera. 45% of that's been recovered by gravity. So this is really good material for processing. As I said, it's a intrusive related gold system. It's currently sitting at 30 million tonnes at 1.12 for around 1.1 million ounces. So that's what we've got classified today. But as I'll speak to in a moment, there's plenty of room for growth for this project. So the analogues for this in North America, in the Tintina province, Northern Star, I've got the Pogo mine there. There's a number of other large mines in that province, such as Fort Knox and Brewery Creek. And if you ever look at a map of the Tintina province, you'll see that there's clusters of gold deposits within that province, and that's what we think is happening here at our Zorro. So currently we own 85% of the project. That's in a fully diluting JV, so the more we spend, the more we earn. And you'll see on that resource numbers there, there's a high grade portion of the deposit. So lifting the cut-off grade up to 1 gram per tonne, the grade sitting at about 2.3 for 715,000 ounces. So we've got a number of really well-defined high-grade zones within Tenera. You'll see Tenera down the bottom there. It's highlighted with the yellow label. And that map is showing about 10 kilometres of strike around the immediate area of Tenera, showing direct sampling of rocks. So this is all outcrop sampling. Anything yellow and above is basically above 0.15 of a gram and above. Gold occurrences through the district, where the gold's associated with the same intrusive rocks that host Tenera and the associated structures that have brought the gold into the system. So you can see there's plenty of gold sitting at surface. So our team's just systematically working through all of those targets to define the next round of drilling for some of these district targets that the Goldfields guys want to sink their teeth into. So far, discovery cost per ounce has been around US $15. That's significantly lower than the global average. We've spent about 85% of our capital since inception into the ground, into the project. So nearly every dollar that we raise goes into developing this project and has been spent on drilling and studies. And we really do think there's a high potential to repeat the success at Tenera on some of these other targets as shown on this map. So this slide shows a 3D shot of the $1,800 US optimized pit shell around the current resource. And it's really highlighting the potential to continue to grow it. So there's a number of areas there you can see. So everything that you can see in colours other than blue on that are greater than 1.5 grams. The pink stuff is above 5 grams. So we're starting to see these well-developed ore zones below the optimised pit. So beyond any open pit mining at Tenera, we really think there's a good opportunity for continued growth in an underground resource as well. But also there's a lot of drilling outside of that pit with significant gold intercepts that just require a few more drill holes to get them into a classified resource. And some of the recent drilling that we've been doing is going to help us with that. And we intend on providing a resource update, hopefully by the end of this calendar year, if not early next year, based off that recent drilling. Again, this slide shows some of the results of the extensional drilling from that recent work. So on that slide, that's a section through the block model looking west. Again, just showing the higher grade portions of the block model. The red outline there, the box shows the limits of the existing resource classification. And hole 309 there had a pretty decent intercept of 53 metres at 1.17 with a high grade portion of 13.5 at 3.63. So that the beginning of that drill intercept that starts at around 40 metres below surface, about 70 metres down hole. So that's essentially a new discovery for this part of the deposit heading south. This is all open to the south. We think there's potential to add a significant amount of ounces between the existing resource outline and out here. So we've got a focus to continue to extend that to the south, some more drilling. Again, it's open at depth and it's also open to the north. So our guys are doing some work on some of those areas at the moment to determine where the ore body heads off to the north. But we've had some pretty interesting results from some of the extensional holes up there that we've drilled in previous campaigns as well. The focus of the last drill campaign, which we've just completed, was really to help improve the resource classification and update that mineral resource estimate. So hole 297 is probably the best, well, it is the best hole that we've drilled since we've been involved with the project. So that was 434.6 metres at 1.22. Now this hole was drilled for a number of reasons. One is you can see on that slide the high grade parts again of the block model. That hole was drilled on an orientation to help join up some of these zones, and it's most certainly done that, and it's proven that we've pretty well got continuous mineralisation from surface to around 350 metres of depth, and it's going to help us link up a few of those high grade zones, as well as also improve the resource classification in some parts of the deposit. So we drilled a series of these holes in the last program, all with very good gold results, and we're working on the updated resource now, which will then feed into a scoping study in the new year. We've done a lot of metallurgy on this project. We've done met work on over 500 kilos of samples. This is a really nice, good, clean, easy, simple ore to treat. 45% gravity recovery, and that's across all grade ranges, even our low grade stuff recovering at 45%, and not 94.5% total recovery at a very coarse 150 micron grind size. So this is all going to be conventional. There's nothing fancy about the processing here. Conventional single stage crushing, gravity and CIL to process this ore. So this is showing the high grade potential. So again, all the material. This is again a section looking west through the deposit. You can see the continuity from surface to depth of those high grade zones. So this really gives some beautiful sweet spots to start mining. And when we start to look at this from a higher grade perspective, we can see a potential for an open pit mine here at plus 2 grams. And when you throw that met in there and the location, it's starting to look like a pretty compelling mining case. So just stepping out onto the regional view, and you can see the location, how close we are to the coast there. It's only 13 kilometres from the coast. It's a newly recognised intrusive related gold system in Chile. As I said, no one's explored for those before in Chile, and our team's been able to recognise this area and provide the impetus to go and peg all the other ground. We had originally that little 1,500 hectare concession holding over the Tenera deposit. That's now grown over 570 square kilometres, covering around 60 kilometres of strike. We've identified the host rocks over that 60 kilometres. We've identified gold mineralisation over that 60 kilometres. That target up the top there, Animus Valles, is a new discovery that was announced a couple of weeks ago. There's gold mineralisation at surface on that target. That's 35 kilometres north of Tenera. So we've got plenty of more work to do to help define some of these targets, but we're pretty optimistic there's going to be another Tenera in there somewhere. I'll just skip over the board and management. If you want to know more about us, come and see us at our booth. And just quickly, corporate snapshot. Currently market cap around 39 million. We've just had that initial 4 million strategic investment from Goldfields. We're actually live with a rights issue to shareholders now. That's fully underwritten, and a fair portion of that's been sub-underwritten by Goldfields as well. So that's been a really good validation for us and our team on what we've been doing at the project. They've obviously gone through a fairly rigorous due diligence process and like what they see so far. So we're pretty excited to get them on board and start to have a real crack at that regional work, while in the background we still continue to grow Tenera. So just quickly unlocking this district scale gold system. We've got a fair bit of work planned for the upcoming 12 to 18 months. So we're about to kick off drilling again. That'll initially be Tenera, get the infill done on that southern section, add some more ounces into the deposit, really get that to a critical mass whereby we think we've got a economic gold project on our hands, and back that up with a scoping study and get stuck into that district scale exploration in the new year with the Goldfields guys. So plenty of work to come, and we really think that this is going to be a multi-million ounce gold district. Thanks for your time.
Bruce McCracken, Managing Director of BMG Resources, joins us to speak about the company's ongoing exploration success at its 100% owned Abercrombie Gold Project in the Agnew-Wiluna Greenstone Belt in WA. BMG completed its third major drilling campaign at Abercrombie in September and recently received diamond drilling results from the Capital deposit, where the company is targeting a maiden mineral resource. To the south of Capital, BMG is progressing a pipeline of regional exploration targets within the Abercrombie project area. Joining us to tell us more, Bruce McCracken. Please make him welcome.
Thank you. And good afternoon all. It's my pleasure to present on BMG Resources. As you've heard, we're a gold explorer, though we do have our eye on other minerals in the battery space. We currently have 3 excellent projects here in Western Australia, of which the Abercrombie project is the most advanced. Given time constraints, I'll only briefly touch on the other projects, Invincible and South Boddington. However, we would be pleased to chat in more detail after the presentation at our exhibition booth. Just quickly looking at our corporate snapshot to begin with, we're ASX listed. We have a clean capital structure. There's good, strong commercial and technical experience across the team, which is heavily invested in the business and focused on delivering a successful outcome for investors. We obviously, we're a very modest enterprise value at this point, so we represent very good buying, particularly with the resource potential in the company, which you'll see, and the strong results that we've been achieving at our Abercrombie project. And we obviously represent great leverage to the gold market for when the cycle turns, which it will. So if we turn to the Abercrombie project, we can see from the image there, we're located south of Wiluna, around 25 kilometres. There's great access to the site off the Goldfields Highway, and we sit just in the zone on the edge of Lake Way. In terms of this project, obviously it sits in the heart of what is a very significant gold producing region. There's a lot of great projects in production of significant scale throughout the region. In terms of where we are, we have 2 granted mining leases, of which we hold the exclusive gold and other minerals rights. Toro Energy holds the uranium rights in the ground. In terms of the mineralized system in our ground, it's a very large, high-grade system. There's significant intersections in both the oxide as well as the fresh rock zone. And we've currently got a strike of around 1.5 kilometres. The geology is excellent. We believe the gold's free milling based on our preliminary metallurgical test work undertaken. We're currently doing further work with GR Engineering and Extreme Metallurgy, so that should be available in the next month or so. The infrastructure within the region is very good. We're obviously proximal to quite a number of operating plants, and this is particularly important as we progress the asset and look at how we best extract value. In terms of our focus, it's primarily been around the capital prospect, which is now progressing towards a maiden resource. Whilst that has been our focus, we have also looked at some regional exploration, and that's delivered some really nice targets, Arrick, Barcher and Capital South, which we'll look at as we move through the presentation. So in terms of the capital prospect, here we're seeing a very large gold prospect. There's an extensive mineralised system. There's numerous high-grade intersections through 2 primary lodes, which you can see in the image. The east lode is the orange section and the west lode the red. There's some fantastic intersections which you may be able to see on the diagram, but I'll pick out a couple. So in the west lode, we're seeing there 57.5 at 5.7 grams, 77 metres at 3 grams. So there's significant scale and grade. Similar things in the eastern lode, 30 metres at 10 grams. So look, there's a really quite a sizable mineralised corridor. We've put 3 major drilling campaigns into the project over the last 2 years. Each has delivered strong results and expanded the mineralised footprint. Our most recent diamond drilling campaign was reported recently, 7 holes for 4,000 metres. We'll look at some of those results. As I mentioned, there's significant scale to this project with a known mineralised corridor now of at least 1.3 kilometres, but it's still open in all directions, with step-out drilling to the north and the south, delivering good intersections. So if we look at a plan view of this prospect, you can see on the diagram that incorporates all of our drilling, with the most recent drill traces shown in the black and the results in the yellow. This year, we've put 2 diamond drilling campaigns through the project, and these have really been a game changer for this project. They've delivered a significant increase in the scale, more than doubling the size of the deposit. They've intersected high-grade gold through the oxidised as well as the fresh rock zones, and they've proven that the system remains fertile at depth with our deepest drilling to date. And I picked out just a couple of the more significant intersections that we've got through our drilling this year. You can see there the 31 metres at 6 grams in the western lode. That was the part of the 77 at 3. The 10 metres at 11.7 grams, that was a nice step out, a long strike for the eastern lode. Unfortunately, we lost the drill rod before we could get to the western lode on that particular hole. So we've re-drilled that as a part of our current campaign we've just reported. We can see that the western lode has now been extended further south with the 5.6 metres at 3.5 grams, and that builds on the intersection of 13.8 metres at 6.5 grams in the western lode, which was our previous most southern drill hole. So that's a 350 metre step out to the south for the western lode, and the eastern lode mineralisation is still live as well. So I mean, it's been a great sort of step forward for the project. We know that these regional systems can run very deep, so the potential for significant ounces at depth remains, though the mineralisation also runs from near surface. So if we look at some long sections looking along each of those lodes, beginning with the western lode, what we're seeing here, and what you're seeing there is in terms of the boxes represent gram metre profiles. So the purple boxes are plus 50 gram metre material, so extremely high grade. You can see there's an emerging steep shoot control to the thick high grades with significant ounces within the supergene zone, That's marked on the diagram with the dotted line. I mean, obviously that's important in terms of casting forward for pit and extraction type scenarios, but we can see that it also continues at depth and along strike. The drilling, you can see the drill traces for our recent drilling, and what that has done is, as I've shown in the earlier slide, it's extended further along strike by at least another 350 metres, as well as continuation at depth. And then beyond that, there are still significant areas to be tested. You can see one of the zones marked on the diagram, but it still remains open to the south, to the north, as well as at depth. A similar story for the eastern lode. It's a much shallower plunge to the mineralised lode with the significant amount of material sitting in that supergene zone, which again, as you look at an extraction type scenario, it provides good potential for open pit extraction. There's a much shallower plunge to the high grade zones here in the eastern lode. There's extensions of this lode both to the south and to the north, and it's still open at depth. And you can see there again, there's quite a significant zone still to be tested. So there's still a lot of upside in terms of the potential for this area. And this is prevalent not just for the sort of the capital zone where we've focused the bulk of our most recent drilling, but there's also great regional potential across this tenement package. We've put quite a significant air core program regionally into the Abercrombie project. You can see the background there represents subaudiomagnetics work that we've done, which identified some structures, and then we've put around 16,000 metres of air core into those structures this year. That's highlighted 3 really nice anomalous zones, and those are all of significant scale, potentially, 1.7 kilometres for Capital South, Archer and Barrick. You can see further to the south, they're sort of over 1 kilometre for Archer and, half a kilometre for Barrick. So there's great potential to add further ounces through Capital style discoveries to the south. And then within Capital itself, we still haven't tested the northern zone of Capital. There's been some historic drilling there, which has really given some great results, which you can see in the diagram: 58 metres at 1.78 at 15, 2 at 28. And all of that sits within the oxidised zone. So we've got some heritage clearances that we have to work through before we move into that area. But there's fantastic potential to add ounces further to the north. So in summary, this is a very exciting time for this project. We see considerable potential to create value, particularly with the significant production and activity through this region, and to build upon our recent exploration success. In terms of the other projects in the company, the Invincible project, that's located in the Pilbara, which is now an established gold and lithium district. We have ground immediately along strike and hosted in the same stratigraphy as Geologist Resources Warrawoona project, which is in production. That's 1.5 million ounces. We host around 12.5 kilometres of that same shear zone. There's been multiple small artisanal workings across our ground with some very high grade gold taken out in lower quantities. So we know there's gold in the system, but there's been little systematic modern exploration. So we see this as a great opportunity for further discoveries, which is what we're focused on. There's also a growing number of lithium projects in the district with the potential for lithium-bearing pegmatite. So we're currently undertaking work to evaluate that potential as well. And if we look more closely at our tenements, you can see the primary tenement sitting there in the shear zone, contiguous with Calidus's ground. That's a primary reef gold hosted quartz vein system with extensive shear zones. We think there's great potential for repeat trends along that Warrawoona shear zone. And then in terms of the lithium potential in the Mount Edgar granite complex, which is the pink area further to the north, that's known to host lithium pegmatites. We have a new area under application, which we see as being highly prospective as well. In terms of the South Boddington project, that's located to the north and south along strike of the Boddington mine. The project area comprises ground within the Saddleback Greenstone Belt, which hosts the Boddington gold mine. We think there's strong potential for additional gold deposits along this belt, as most of it remains underexplored or unexplored. In terms of our package, we have 2 granted exploration licenses together with 2 application exploration licenses, and they're interpreted to be in that similar stratigraphy to the Boddington mine. So whilst this is a longer term opportunity, it's one that we see as being highly prospective. So in terms of summary, why invest? Obviously, we've got gold projects in great exploration provinces and production provinces here in WA. It's advanced. 2 of the projects have high-grade gold confirmed, and the Boddington opportunity provides early-stage exploration in what is a world-class belt. The drilling programs have generated very encouraging results, particularly at Abercrombie, with some outstanding high-grade gold intersections. And our EV is very attractive, particularly relative to the exploration upside in the company and providing strong valuation leverage to what is a potential re-rating within the gold market and resource definition. So that's it. Thanks very much for your time. If you have any questions or would like to chat further, please come and see us in the booth.
Thank you. Green Technology Metals is a Canadian-focused lithium exploration and development business led by a highly experienced team with significant global lithium exploration and mining expertise. GT1 are currently accelerating exploration on their high-grade hard rock spodumene assets located in Ontario in Canada. The company's CEO, Luke Cox, joins us today to provide the latest from Green Technology Metals. Please make him welcome.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to extract you from Western Australia and I'm going to throw you up to Canada. We're going to talk about what's happening up there with lithium. So with GT1, we're looking to define the resources that we got. So this isn't grassroots exploration. This is a drill out. We've got numerous projects. We've known LCT spodumene-based pegmatites, and that's what we're drilling out. So we've got 2 projects on the go, which I'll talk about. GT1, you know, we're a West Australian-based company. We've moved everyone over to Canada, apart from myself. And what we're looking to do is build a vertically integrated business. So that's taking it all the way from exploration into mining, create a concentrate, and then convert that into a hydroxide. Now, to do that, that's a big order. So we're not going to do that alone. So we're going to partner. And I'll talk about some of the partners that have joined us already. And then unlock the value. So the way you do that, I mean, the prices for spodumene concentrate are astronomical at the moment. But if you have a look at the downstream chemicals like carbonate and hydroxide, they're even higher. So that's why we're looking to unlock the value by going all the way. So just a snapshot of the business. You know, market cap sitting there at 280 million. We've got cash in the bank, which is great. So we're not having to go out and rattle the tin for more cash. And just with the share registry, there's a big ticket item there. So 60% is held by the major funds, and the other 40% is held by the partners of the business. So that's why you don't really see the share price in a bit of a yo-yo scenario going up and down, because we're looking to take this, all of us are going long on this project and looking to take this into production. And obviously we've got strong brokerage research with Canaccord and Bell. So the projects. So not only is it Canada, we're really focusing in at the moment on Ontario. So we've got two main projects, which are called Seymour over to the east and Root over to the west. So we're currently drilling on those projects. We've already got 10 million tonnes at Seymour. We've got the other projects coming online. We've got good exploration targets. We've got good grades. So we're well on the way in that vertical integration. So like every good business, you need a good team. So in the chair, you got John Young. So co-founded Pilbara Minerals. I mean, so he's got the experience of going all the way from exploration into mining. So having John in the chair has been great for the business and really directing us to making sure we do the right things as we go along. Cameron Henry. So he founded Primero. Primero build lithium processing plants all around the world. So already we've got the processing team in-house. And then Pat Murphy, so AMCI, they take projects from exploration and fund them all the way into production. So there's a major part of our funding, and they're introducing partners into the project that will focus on that vertical integration. Then Rob Longley, known Rob for many years now, a highly experienced geologist, and he's on the board and directing us as well from the geological perspective. Then on the ground, you got myself. I started life as a geo, worked my way up the ranks, you know, in WA, kicking rocks in the gold mines, iron ore, nickel. And then I worked into technical services and then as a mine manager. So I guess from my experience, I have experience of taking projects all the way into production, so exploration and into mining. And then Matt Herbert, who's just flown in from Canada, literally yesterday. So Matt's in the crowd there. So Matt also significant experience of taking projects all the way into production, you know, ex-Rio Tinto, ex-FMG. So real high-class experience within the team. So partners, how are we going to get there? So you need a process. You need to process the material that you're going to mine. So Primero, already 6.5% of the business. Lithium Americas Corp, 5.2%. So they're one of the biggest lithium players in North America. And then AMCI, 10%. They're all going long on the project and they will stay long. Now, if you look on the right-hand side there, this is our next investment partner. So we can go and mine, we can create a concentrate with Primero, but then there's that downstream chemical processing. That is the next partner that will come in to GT1, and we're well down that path already because there's so much hive of activity going on in North America right now. There's a pretty exhaustive list of people that are prepared to jump on board. So plan on a page, what would this look like? So right in the middle there, made in Ontario. So the Ontario government, they're pushing hard to create a lithium supply chain in country and within Ontario. So how will we marry into that long-term plan? Well, we'll start off on the right-hand side with our eastern hubs, which is Seymour. We'll get that into production. We'll create a concentrate. And then we may be selling into a concentrate market for a year or two. But speaking to the downstream converters, they believe they can get a converter up and running as soon as possible, as soon as we create a spodumene concentrate. So that may go straight into a converter and come out as a lithium hydroxide. Whilst that's going on, we're not going to hold back. We're drilling out all of our projects. So that's where the Western Hub comes online, and they will feed into a central converter that is scalable. So we're not going to go and try and build the biggest converter in North America. We're going to start off around the 20 to 25,000 tonnes. If you work the numbers on 25,000 tonnes and what the price of a hydroxide is at the moment, that's a big number. And then we can scale up. We can put additional trains in. When I say additional trains, it means you can add another train of conversion into the current plant that you have. So that's the plan on the page. Right, so what makes us different? How can we get into production as soon as possible? Well, one thing we've been quite diligent on is we sit within an infrastructure corridor right there that sits around Thunder Bay. So Thunder Bay is our hub. That's where we got our offices. That's where we got all of our teams. They venture out. We then built camps on site. So we have a 30-man camp at Seymour and we have a 30-man camp at Root, and they rotate through on rosters. So they're pretty much on a 2-and-2 roster. On each site, we've got 2 rigs each and they're working 24/7. So you can see we're really pumping out the meters and proving up the resources. Now, all around us are those little blue stars. They are hydro plants. All of Ontario is powered by green renewable energy. Now, that is a massive ticket item for where we're trying to achieve a clean green lithium. Now, there's lots of places that don't have this type of power, but Thunder Bay, that's all it has. So it's a pre-made green energy source for us. So that's why Thunder Bay has become so critical. It's a 30-minute drive to the United States. We're right in that corridor. We've had the roads already built. We've got the power there. We have the transcontinental railway line goes through our tenement. So you can just see everything's lining up quite nicely. And once we do create that, that hydroxide, it's going to have to go to where the people make the batteries. Well, they're already building the battery plants just in the southern part of Toronto. We're calling that the electric corridor. So you've got the likes of GM, Ford, Tesla, and there's a few others in there, and they're building their battery plants and their vehicles there right now. So they're screaming out for feed, and that's where GT1 comes to the forefront, so first to market. Like anything, why Ontario? You know, we have a really good workforce. When you fly into Thunder Bay, there's universities, schools, regional hospitals, there's obviously the power, there's the workforce there. You know, we're engaging with the community there. So not only with the Indigenous and First Nation groups, but everyone else that works in that area. So we're really building what will be, I guess, a lithium supply chain that where all Ontarians will get involved in this. And then also quite active on the sponsorship side as well. You know, there's stuff there like the soup kitchens, you know, the women's broom ball. So there's a whole host of things that we're doing right now with the community. And like anything, you know, you can have a great board, but you need someone to execute the plan. So right there in Thunder Bay, you know, we've got Nathan Sims, born and bred Thunder Bay, senior, well, he's the exploration manager. He's running all the rigs. Andrew Johnston, she lives out there now. So she's managing all the ESG space. Because at the end of the day, you're going out there. And if someone rocked up into your backyard and said, I'm going to start a mine, you know, the first thing you're going to say is, well, what's in it for me? So that's why you have to have all that engagement, ESG, going out to the First Nation, the Indigenous groups and say, look, you know, there's jobs, there's funding, royalties, there's a whole host of things where you can be engaged in this project. And then Daryl Boyd. So Daryl Boyd's heading up the permitting and processing team. So what that is, in Ontario, you know, there's the Sudbury mines. There's over 100 years worth of mining right there. So the mines department's very developed on the stage process of how to get an operation up and running. So Daryl Boyd heads up the permitting team. So we're expediting that process as well. So last 12 months, you know, we've only been listed for 12 months. This has been a whirlwind. We raised 24 million. We went straight up there, started drilling. We built camps. We expanded our land holding from 10,000 hectares to 40,000 hectares. There's some prime lithium real estate up there right now. We cap raised for 55 million. We took on Lithium Americas Corp. We commenced our metallurgical test work. You know, we doubled our resource straight away. We built another camp at Root. Yeah, this is, we're moving very fast, but we're doing that because we're going to be first to market. So Seymour, the flagship, we've already doubled the resource there. We just had a recent discovery, which we're calling Blue Bear. Really good results from the surface. So we're starting to drill additional holes down dip and along strike to find out the sheer size of this. And throughout the Seymour complex, there's other projects that we're drilling right now with the 2 drill rigs. We've actually just splintered one off. They're doing the sterilization drilling for where we're going to put the processing plant and where the other facilities are going to go. So you can see how advanced we are. And there's Blue Bear. So one thing we did, you know, we invested our time in additional geophysics and additional geochemistry to locate pegmatites under surface cover. So they're the ones that you don't see because they're soil cover. So once again, our exploration models worked and we located Blue Bear, which is high grade from the surface. Now, taking you 200 Ks over to the west, this is the second project that we kick off. This is the second asset. Yesterday, I sent out some drill results, up to 4% lithium content within the core. Now, when we looked at this project, there was historical data there. It said there was multiple pegmatites, relatively thin on an east-west strike. We've gone in there with 2 rigs. We've already drilled over 40 holes in the space of a month. What we're seeing is one pegmatite that's thicker, shallower, and higher grade. So that's absolutely amazing for us. We don't get the internal dilution, just like what we're seeing at Seymour. Now, it's extending east and it's extending west. If you go west, it's looking like it's going to connect to Morrison. So Morrison was another area where there's known LCT pegmatites with spodumene. They were drilled in 1950. So if these two connect, there's several kilometers of strike with high potential of locating these or joining these two together. And then you jump over to Root Bay. There's a large pegmatite there, LCT spodumene. I've been there, walked over the massive ridge. I said to the guys, right, go east-west and let's see what else we can find. And they've located additional pegmatites and spodumene crystals. One thing we're finding with the Root project is the density of the spodumene crystals is very high, which is giving it the better grade, which is great from a processing side. Now, as I say, Primero, one of the founding members of GT1, they're doing our scoping study or preliminary economic assessment, and we're highly advanced. You can see how many of those processes are now complete, and we'll be delivering that in Q1 next year. And bear in mind, that will be a vertically integrated scoping study. So all the way from exploration to a lithium hydroxide. We've kicked off network. So essentially all of our samples have gone off to SGS Lakefield Lab in Ontario. They're converting that into a concentrate. We've already got some results back. We already know that's going to go high grade. So DMS and then flotation will be easily achievable. And then that'll be converted into a hydroxide. So I guess this is a bit of a snapshot. Where are we going to end up? So drilling will never stop. We've got 40,000 hectares of ground. You know, we've got the 4 rigs on 2 sites. They will start to prove up all the resources on those 2 projects. And then we'll get additional rigs splintering off into all these other projects that we have, because we need a long-term supply chain. So we're not talking the 10 years. We're now looking what happens after 10 years, 20, 30 to 50 years. We're kicking off all the baseline studies. So that's already occurred for Seymour, and now that's occurring for Root. The assessment will come out, and that will just roll straight into a feasibility study. So with these studies, we're not just have a fence line where you go from scoping studies to feasibility. A lot of the work we're doing right now is feasibility work. Straight into project construction, and then first concentrate 2025, and then first hydroxide in 2027. Now, speaking to the downstream producers, they reckon they can have that plant up and running a little bit sooner. So watch this space. So why North America? Right, the Americans have released the Inflation Reduction Act. That is where they're highly incentivizing everyone to get into production as soon as possible. And that involves not just the United States. They're now reaching over into Canada and say they will invest that money in Canada. So, okay, that's great. So the Canadian government have now turned around and they'll be releasing their own equivalent Inflation Reduction Act to invest specifically in Ontario. And that's where we come to the top of the list. So, yeah, what to expect? Drilling results, baseline studies, expansion of the team, scoping study, bulk samples, everything you need to know. Come and see me if you've got any questions. I've got a booth just outside, but yeah, we're moving very fast, and it's been an exciting time. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. I made my first trip to Canada earlier this year, back in June, July, to Toronto, as the locals call it, in Vancouver, and I was absolutely staggered at the number of Teslas that are on the road over there. Every second vehicle is a Tesla. It quite amazed me. Thank you for your presentation. Andrew Munckton has been Managing Director of Kin Mining for the last 4.5 years, an experienced geologist who's held senior management roles in both ASX-listed companies and gold operations in a career spanning more than 30 years. In this role, he has responsibility for overseeing exploration programs, feasibility studies, project assessments and acquisitions, project divestments, joint ventures and capital raisings, leading the company to its present positions of a key asset in the consolidation of the Leonora district. There should be a full stop in there somewhere, but there isn't. Please welcome Andrew Munckton.
Thanks, Jerry, and thank you very much to RIU for the opportunity. Quick snapshot of Kin. We're an advanced explorer. 1.4 million ounces of gold principally in our Cardinia project. We have 2 large shareholders, the Delphi Group out of Germany, St. Barbara, that collectively constitute just under half of the cap of the company. And we have development optionality associated with the 3 processing plants in the Leonora region. And we've just taken a strategic stake in Dacian, one of our next door neighbours, of approximately 10%. But the theme of the presentation is on discovery, but I'll also touch on what's going on in the regional consolidation of this Leonora area, because it's the question I get asked most often at the moment. You'll see Kin in red on the slide have 2 significant blocks of ground, one within that Leonora trend sandwiched between St Barbara and Genesis, the other at Cardinia on the what's known as the Keith Kilkenny Shear Zone, and that's the area that we think the significant discovery will come from in this next period of time. But that Cardinia block is adjacent to Dacian's block to the north at Redcliffe and some 80 kilometres from their Mount Morgan's processing plant. The background on the company, we're about an $85 million market cap currently, so about 70 million enterprise value, valued at about $50 an ounce, so relatively cheap compared to our peers. You can see the share price performance in the last 12 months. Similarly, as everybody has alluded to, and the Argonaut speaker this morning, David, alluded to, everybody's got belted around a little bit in this last 12 months. But we expect that as gold continues to appreciate, you'll get significant re-rates in a number of companies, and we're putting ourselves forward as one of those. Management team, new addition, Leah Moore as our exploration manager. But I think if you look at the histories, we have a bias towards development and a bias towards operations management. So expect something similar coming out of Kin in the not too distant future. As I said, the theme of the conference is the next big discovery. So we're flagging the Cardinia Gold Camp as the place that we think that it's most likely to come from for Kin. And many of the discoveries that you've heard about today and you'll hear about tomorrow come from relatively mature terrains. It's not that common that you go to a brand new terrain to completely green fields and make a significant discovery. And this Cardinia Gold Camp, while it's relatively mature and has been held by a number of companies over the best part of the last 30 or 40 years, it's still relatively unexplored, particularly at depth. This is a gravity map of the Cardinia area. In fact, it's the eastern corridor of the Cardinia area. So it's a scale of about 5 kilometres north-south by 2 kilometres east-west. The blue areas that you see on the picture are gravity lows, so they're felsic intrusive rocks at depth. And the gold wraps around all those felsic intrusions and sits in the structure that's been developed above those felsic intrusions and to the north of those felsic intrusions. And we'll concentrate on the Helens Rangoon structure as a place that we're doing some deeper drilling right at the moment to illustrate what is going on in this whole Cardinia eastern corridor. But I've highlighted on the slide in red, some of the deeper holes that have been drilled across some of those deposits, and the grade certainly persists at depth in what we now understand through all the geological work that we've done in this last 3 or 4 years are reasonably well predictable positions. So the reputation that Kin had as a relatively low grade and relatively dispersed geological mineralizing environment, I think we're a long way towards dispelling that now. It's looking much more like a structural high grade kind of deposit style that we see here. I'll give you a couple of illustrations of that. One at a project called Helens East. Cross section, the old drilling, which was near surface, is a bit scratchy, a few moderate intersections. But once you drill underneath that into that much more fertile structural position, you end up with pretty solid intersections, 7 at 24 in this case, and 100 metres south of that, it's 5 metres at 15, and a couple of 100 metres south of that, it's another 10 metres at 3.5. So there's repeatability on these deeper high-grade intersections. A further example at the project of the Rangoon deposit in the very northern part of that slide. Slightly different style of mineralisation here, so a much flatter east style as opposed to the steep west or vertical style that we see in the majority of the deposits. And while again near surface, it's relatively thin, 4 metres or 11 metres at between 1 and 2 grams. Once you get into the geologically controlled mineralised position, it blows out to somewhere between 25 and 40 metres, albeit at a gram on average, but there are high-grade zones within that, averaging better than 3. So, and in this particular example, we're down at about 100 metres vertical, so you can imagine a pretty low stripping ratio open pit to extract that 20, 30, 40 metres of mineralisation towards the base of it. Now, all those things sort of set the scene, and while we're considered a mature exploration area, we have been doing some advanced geophysics, and discovery, in my experience, is a combination of good science and luck. And here's an example of the luck coming into play. So when Navigator Resources, which owned this project in excess of 10 years ago, went into receivership, in order to meet expenditure commitments on some of the tenure, the receiver of Navigator undertook an IP survey across the eastern corridor, or the very southern lines of that IP survey went across the areas that we now know as these mineralised areas. And so we have reprocessed that IP data, which is 13 or 14 years old. It's on 1,500 metre spaced sections, so very broadly spaced at this stage. And we've come up with a number of good conductors at depth, and some conductors near the surface that are associated with what we now know to be the structural positions that host the majority of the mineralisation. We released some visuals from the very first drill hole into that on Monday. We've drilled 4 holes so far on the 5th hole currently. That central hole on that slide intersected the visuals. So down at 104 to 131 metres, we intersected these flat dipping laminated quartz veins, which are typical of what you see in the other mineralisation styles at Cardinia Hill, at Hallands, at Hallands East. Some coarse-free gold in that. A little bit further down the hole, at about 160 metres down hole, we ended up with about a 50-metre zone, multiple laminated veins and multiple alteration zones within that 50-metre zone. There are unmineralised pieces within that 50-metre section as well, but there's certainly strong mineralisation in that area. And then down right where the Rangoon Fault intersects the top of the IP anomaly, we hit 13 metres of visually about 5% pyrite. And pyrite and gold are strongly associated in this particular style of mineralisation. And as you can see from the reprocessed image, there's lots of other IP anomalies, and quite a broad one here between the Rangoon and the Hallands East Fault. So we're busily drilling hole number 4 and hole number 5 into those lower tenor IP anomalies at the moment. But very, very early days here, but we see that this deeper drilling has real potential following these more subtle IP anomalies that we've picked up at least in 2 lines, and I suspect that we'll end up with a whole raft more IP lines across this whole zone. The picture of the sulfidic silicious main zone of mineralisation looks exactly the same as holes further to the north within the Rangoon deposit at more than 100 metres depth and 300 metres north of this, that graded particularly attractive for underground type grades. So we're very hopeful that this lower zone grades when we get the assay results back in 2 or 3 weeks' time. You can recognise the mineralisation in RC drilling as well. It's a typical quartz, pyrite, anchorite type of mineralisation. Contains gold and silver in about equal ratios. The numbers that you see on that chip tray with the 3s and 5s and 8s are visual pyrite percentages. So the mineralisations now, once you have your eye in, it's pretty easy to pick. And so the background in geology and the background in the area over the last 3 or 4 years is standing us in very good stead in being able to target this higher grade, deeper mineralisation. Metallurgical test work, and we have a whole suite of metallurgical test work across 7 or 8 deposits now. Oxides and transitionals, typical conventional processing, 94.5% recovery. But the sulfide is more amenable to flotation. You get somewhere between 80 and 88% recovery on conventional processing through that sulfide material, but you get somewhere between 91 and 97% recovery if you float the material and then fine grind the concentrate. And typically you get about a 10% mass recovery, and you get slightly better than 1-to-1 gold to sulfur ratio, 27 grams per tonne gold, 23% sulfur in the concentrate. So it's a very clean and logical and easily treatable concentrate. No deleterious elements in that concentrate. You get a little bit of copper, you get a little bit of lead, you get a little bit of zinc. Concentrate pictures, just to drive home the point. The gold's relatively fine, typically 5 to 10 microns, but it sits on either in the ganj, the dark material in those microphotographs, or on the edge of the pyrite grains, which are the sort of grey, large, rounded shapes on that. You do occasionally get this coarse gold in the bottom right-hand corner. That's a 100 micron piece of gold. But in the top right, you do get gold occluded within pyrites, and that's the bit that you get better recovery from if you go to fine concentrate grinding of this kind of material. So it all makes sense. Leonora area consolidation. So I mentioned that Kin has significant ground holdings both in the Leonora side and the Keith-Kilkenny Shear Zone side adjacent to the Dacian owned projects. Dacian are under takeover offer from Genesis. Genesis were 76.1%. Last time I read their significant shareholder statement. Kin's acquired 10.5% through ourselves and our major shareholder, Delphi. We already have a very cooperative arrangement or very cooperative relationship with Dacian. We have a adjoining tenure up near their hub project. We're seeking approval for a development project there. They too are seeking approval for a development project. We've permitted them to dispose of their water that would come out of their open pit into one of our open pits. So you can see there's already a good deal of cooperation going on between Dacian and ourselves. We want Genesis to be ultimately successful in their takeover offer for Dacian, because we see this whole region as does just about everybody that looks at it as primarily a consolidation region. And I think St Barbara have come out and said yes, they think it's a good idea. Craig Jetson said he thought there would be a 650 to 800,000 ounce production hub out of this area ultimately, if all the parties can get together and be under the one umbrella. So the consolidation is live now. It was probably started by a bid for St Barbara on Kin that was rejected a little over a year ago now. But we see that we'll be a strong participant in that consolidation, but it will take, I think, a good deal of time, and there will no doubt be twists and turns and lumps in the highway on this consolidation pathway. But ultimately, I believe it will get there. Development options for us, I've mentioned there's significant excess capacity in the Leonora region. 3 processing plants, collectively, some 9 million tonne per annum now, probably capable of 11 to 12. Kin has 2 open pit developments. The first one is already approved for about 100,000 ounces of production. The second one is sitting with DMERS at the moment, and we'll prepare a third one that contains about 200,000 ounces of production this calendar year and submit that to DMERS as well. But potentially, if we're good enough or lucky enough to turn our exploration results that you've seen and our potential that I've tried to convey to you, if we can turn that into a significant discovery in our own right, then standalone development, particularly for sulfide, is still on the cards for us. You can see the infrastructure that we already have. There's a partially built tank farm there as an example on a failed attempt that Kin had in a previous life to get into production. But it's a good operating site. Much of it's already been invested, so the standalone option is certainly on the cards for us if we're lucky or good in the exploration process. Summary and key takeaways. Our focus is on making one of these major discoveries because I think we want to be in charge of our own destiny here. But in any case, we can participate pretty strongly in the regional consolidation that's alive and happening now. And I'll leave you with those things to contemplate, and your afternoon tea is awaiting, Jerry.
Thank you, Andrew. And let's not forget that Genesis were a very good rock band. Okay, afternoon tea is next, and we are back at